What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video and back with another Lightsworn format video, the format right before Edison format. And this will probably be my last Lightsworn format video, mainly because it feels like the more and more I cover Lightsworn format, the more and more it's just sort of like an alternate version of Edison, like very, very close to Edison. And so I feel like covering more decks in the format would just kind of be covering Edison formats in slightly different context. So I, don't really have much more to say about the format in that regard. And also, it's good to get moving on to other formats that are a bit more different and explore what else the 5Ds era has to offer. Now, I will be trying to set up some collabs with Edison content creators to cover Edison format a bit on the channel. So that'll be fun, just like I did with GOAT format when I covered that. But those will probably be coming out sporadically, like in the midst of my regular coverage videos. So definitely look forward to those, but know that we'll probably be diving in, like basically directly into Frog format next, which is the format after this one. But before we leave this format, I wanted to try out one of the coolest decks in Edison format in this format because I think it's interesting to see how modern developments in Edison can influence other formats around it. And the deck that I'm referring to is, of course, Gigavise. This is a very cool combo deck that's basically trying to use the power of Lonefire into Gigaplant with Supervise to just, set up these crazy combos using things like Power Tool Dragon to search out more copies of Supervise and extend your combo even further. And the deck is just super cool and super hard to beat if it gets going. Now, the issue with it can be that, it can be a bit fragile if it doesn't draw its good hands, or if it whiffs on things like Power Tool, Dragon searches. But in general, even if it does do that occasionally, it still is a fairly good deck. And not much changes between this format and Edison format. The main difference is that in Edison format, there's 2 dandies, 1 foolish. In this format, there's 2 foolish, 1 dandy. So we are playing that change ratio. I think actually going into this, I thought that this would be worse for us, because having the dandies as like, discard fodder off things like Raigeki Break would be pretty nice. But actually, in playing some games, I think the double foolish actually helps out a little bit more than having double dandy and 1 foolish, just because it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Like if you've got like a miracle fertilizer, you can set that up with foolish. You can get a thing in the grave for Gigaplant to bring back if you've already started to establish your combo. So I do think that having the double foolish as opposed to the double dandy actually helps out the consistency of this deck a little bit here. Now, this list that I've got in front of me here, I don't know if it's the most optimal list or not, especially when you come over to the context of Lightsworn format, which is a bit more of an explosive format. But this list is basically the same as a list on the I Am Nerd YouTube channel, where Gigavise actually, sort of guest starred there on their podcast. I'll leave a link to that video down below, and I'll also leave a link down to Gigavise's channel down below, because I think they're a really cool hype YouTube channel, just, grinding out this deck, really showing off the limits of what it can do. And if you, like what you see in this video, check out some of theirs and you'll see some pretty wild stuff, because they know this deck a lot better than I do, and they can do combos I couldn't even dream of. So I'm going to try and equip myself the best I can with this deck, but I do readily admit that I am not the best Gigavise player, right? So I might do things that are suboptimal. Let me know if you see lines down in the comments below that are better than what I end up going for. I do already know some lines in the videos that I will point out that were, not the right lines for me to do, and I'll point out why they weren't the right lines and what I should have done instead. And we'll talk about whether that would have changed the outcome of some of the games that I played here. But as I mentioned, this is basically that list, except I upped the Foolish Burial count. I, downgraded the Dandelion count to accommodate for the changed ban list. And I also adjusted the side just slightly. I added a second Lightning Premier and a third DD Crow, because Lightsworn is a much more powerful deck in this format than it is in Edison format, and so we want to accommodate for that. But I do think that this deck is pretty well placed in this metagame, just because it is a more explosive deck, and you kind of need to be an explosive deck in this format to actually see success, more so than in Edison format. Now, I'm not going to go through the exact card by card here, as you can see it on the I Am Nerd YouTube video that I put in the link down below, and I also think that The deck itself is kind of hard to conceptualize until you see it in action. So hopefully seeing it in action will help show you what we're doing here. So let's dive into a replay against Aratos, a frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We're going to be diving in, and we do lose the rock, paper, scissors in the first game here. This is not really the best hand. I mean, I will say if we, if our opponent summons out a monster, we can make something happen here because we can Foolish a Plant to Grave, Hidden Armory twice to get out like Mark of the Rose and DDR to then, bring back the monster that we banished from Mark of the Rose and take our opponent's thing. So that's maybe something we can do, but it's not really an ideal hand here. But the 6th card that we draw next turn could be something good. Our opponent's going to go for Gold Sark for a charge of the Light Brigade, revealing that they are on Lightsworn or deck playing the Lightsworn engine, of which there are a couple there as well. We draw Miracle Fertilizer, which is actually really good here. Because now it gives us another way to use that Foolish Burial. Again, this is sort of what I mentioned in the deck breakdown, where having double Foolish as opposed to double Dandy can help in situations like this. So we could potentially Foolish a Monster Grave, Miracle Fertilizer it back, and do stuff like that. Now, we take a little bit of time to think here because this is a very tricky deck to play. And so we have to really map out our line here and see if we can actually get to lethal. Let me know what you would do from this position down in the comments below, posing one of these puzzlers, just like the Gigavise YouTube channel does here. But we're going to start with a Foolish Burial, sending a Lone Fire Blossom, go for a Miracle Fertilizer, bring back that Lone Fire Blossom, tributing the Lone Fire Blossom to go into another Lone Fire Blossom, get fodder and grave. I don't think they've got like DD Crow or something at this point, but having an extra Lone Fire and Grave can't hurt. And then we'll go into a Gigavise off of that. Now we can hit an Armory, milling a Heavy Storm for a Supervise here. We can equip the Supervise to the Gigaplant back, a Lone Fire Blossom, and now we're sort of in the sort of combo bread and butter point that you should be used to if you play this deck and want to play this deck. So we Lone Fire for a Copy Plant here to then go into a Power Tool Dragon with the Gigaplant. And then because Supervise, when it's in a graveyard, brings back a normal monster from your grave, you can bring back this Gigaplant, go for the Power Tool Dragon effect, revealing a Supervise, and then a DDR. If we miss on the Supervise here, we've got Hidden Armory to add another Supervise to hand if we want to, but we do hit the Supervise, so we can just go for Supervise, bring back that Copy Plant with the Gigaplant, go into another Power Tool Dragon, try and get the Supervise again, because again, if we whiff on this, we can just go for a Hidden Armory and get it that way. So we'll go Supervise, DDR, and then we'll go for Hidden Armory on that Supervise there. And then, yeah, our opponent's just going to scoop it up because we can go Supervise on the Gigaplant, bring back the Lone Fire, go into Titanial, and just win the game from there if they don't have Gores. And it didn't seem like they did. So going into game 2, hopefully that showed off what the deck can do when it really, combos off without interruption. Let's see if we'll be able to let, our hair down as much as we were able to last game. Opponent's going to open the Solar Recharge, pitching a Gareth here, drawing 2, milling 2. Milling a Necro Gardener, which can be a bit problematic for us to eat through. It's not the end of the world if we set up our big combo board. We often do have monsters that make it very difficult for our opponent to interact with our stuff. But the Necro Gardener can just make it a bit trickier to get lethal on turns that we'd want to do that. Our opponent's going to activate a Gold Shark, searching out a charge with the Light Brigade again. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. And we draw a Super Solar Nutrient. We're going to go for a Foolish Burial here and mill a Dandy because we want to use the Super Solar Nutrient to then go into a Lone Fire. So we're going to attempt to do that. Our opponent is going to Twister that. So it seems like they did side in some things against us here. And we will lose that Super Solar Nutrient and thus not be able to summon out the Lone Fire Blossom. So now we're in a bit of a tricky spot here. We don't really have a good Hidden Armory thing that we can do. I mean, I don't even know what we'd want to mill here for that. So I think what we're actually going to do is just try and bait out something like a Raikou here, so that way they can't go into a Celestia on the following turn. And so we're just going to summon out this Nettles attacking in the set. It's a Necro Gardener. Okay. Not what we were expecting, but also not too upset about that because now they can't get a bunch of mills if it had been a Raikou. We're just going to pass back to them. If they can't clear both our Nettles and our token, then we can tribute out a Gigaplant next turn. Fun fact about Nettles, if we want to preserve this over the Dandelion token, let's say they summon out a monster just to attack into the Nettles, we can actually use Nettles to pop the token and keep it around on field. Doesn't often come up with Nettles, but, it is something that can happen. Our opponent's going to summon out an Honest, though. and attack over our token and just bounce that back, pass back to us. We should be in a pretty good spot here, actually. We don't, unfortunately, have access to a Lone Fire Engrave, which is a bit awkward, but we can still go for a Gigaplant here and bring back that Nettles. We can go for an 8 here, which we will do, and go for a Colossal Fighter because we know they have the Honest in hand. So Colossal Fighter is the only level 8 that really is resilient against that here. Our opponent's going to DD Crow our Gigaplant, which is unfortunate because we actually would have had a pretty sick turn here. We could make like a bunch of level 8s with these hidden armories, searching out the Supervises, and we actually could have potentially gone for a lot of damage, although the Necro in grave and the Necro on field would make that a bit tough. That being said, we can still attack into the Necro Gardener here with the Colossal Fighter, and we can pass back to our opponent. Actually, we couldn't have done Hidden Armory last turn because we had summoned out the Gigaplant. Sorry about that. Error in my commentary, but still, I think this was a fine play to do because we'd get back the Gigaplant, have the Colossal Fighter up, and then if the Gigaplant survived, then we'd have access to Hidden Armories. As is, next turn, we can still go for Hidden Armory on a DDR to then, bring back that Gigaplant, maybe Hidden Armory, a Supervise as well, and get things going that way. Our opponent does have the charge, which they will be able to use here, milling 3 and getting a search for a Lumina. Now, they do have only 3 names in grave, but if they got like a JD in hand, they can crash in a Lumina potentially, which could be awkward for us. Now they got the 4th name with that Celestia there. So they're going to mill 3 off that charge, search out another Lightsworn here, searching out a Lila. No spells and traps on our end, so we're not too worried about that. We are worried about Judgment Dragon, which unfortunately they do have, so they're going to pay 1,000. Pop our Colossal Fighter. Summon out a Lumina, use the effect to bring out a Wolf. And now we are taking a lot of damage here. That's 1,000, 21, and then 3k. So that's going to make things a bit tricky for us. They're going to mill a bunch in the end phase here, milling another Wolf, and they also do have access to a 3rd Necro Gardener. So things are not looking the best for us here. They're going to pass it back to us. We draw into Miracle Fertilizer, which, we don't really have the most plans to actually get back here. So we're kind of in an awkward spot. I think what I might have to do is, we don't really have a good option here. Hidden Armory for Mark of the Rose can allow us to take the Judgment Dragon and blow up the board except for itself. So that's something, but we don't really have a good option beyond that besides like Hidden Armoring also for a DDR, but then that doesn't really do anything here. So it's just kind of rough. We got to hope that we get some decent mills here. So we're going to go for Hidden Armory, mill the Lone Fire Blossom, and I do search out the Mark of the Rose. I think this is a mistake because you do get to mill and then search a equip spell. I was just focused on the Mark of the Rose, but I should have realized that because the Lone Fire is now in grave, I have different options available. So for instance, now with that Lone Fire in grave, we actually have something really good to bring back with the Gigaplant. We can actually go for a Black Rose, blow up the board, and then have, further things to do here. So what I should do with this is I should search out a Supervise or DDR, and then with the other Hidden Armory, well, actually, I guess DDR pitches a card from hand, so it's going to be awkward either way, but Supervise is definitely something that I should search out here. But I search out Mark of the Rose instead, and that's going to be a bit awkward here. Doesn't really work out the way that I want it to. I go for a mill of the Hidden Armory for that Supervise, and then I use the Miracle Fertilizer on the Lone Fire here, which, effectively, it works out similarly to if I had searched out DDR, pitch Miracle Fertilizer, bring back Gigaplant. So I don't think this is terrible. It just plays into like DD Crow more, which is not something I want to do. But it looks like they don't have it, so we're just going to go for Lone Fire for Gigaplant, and then Supervise the Gigaplant. Gigaplant back that Lone Fire. I actually could have searched out double Supervise. Maybe that's what I should have done with the Hidden Armory upon seeing the Lone Fire engrave, because I go Miracle Fert for Lone Fire. Lone Fire, bring out Gigaplant from deck. Supervise, bring back the Gigaplant. Go for Gigaplant and a Copy Plant into Black Rose, just like normal. But if I'd had a Supervise here instead of the Mark of the Rose, then I could actually try and make some things happen. Now, that being said, we know about Honest in hand, so we're in a very tricky spot here, no matter what. But, at least if I'd been able to combo off further, maybe I could have done something to help a little bit against that. I'm not really sure what I'd try and end on. With triple Necro Engrave, I'm not killing this turn, so I'm not likely going to win here. I don't really have any extra deck tools to stop an attack in, so I just got to hope that they don't have enough with an Honest to kill us here. Unfortunately, they do have Lila attacking into the Gigaplant, and they've got double Honest there, so that's just going to be the end of the game. So I think, again, I definitely misplayed here. Upon milling the Lone Fire, I should have searched out Supervise, and then gotten out a second Supervise with the Hidden Armory to just have more plays available here. But unfortunately, I did not think that far through the combo there. But we're going to go on into game 3 here, and we are going to go first. And we open an okay one. We kept in the Heavy Storm, mainly because I know that Artos often plays a fair amount of back row in the Lightsworn deck, and so I felt like having the Heavy Storm could be a decent option. But I probably should have sided out the Heavy Storm, because Lightsworn doesn't play too many back row, and if they do have it, they've got it. I can sort of try and figure out ways to play around that, but I probably didn't need it. But anyways, here, I start off with a Gold Sark for the Lone Fire Blossom, and then go for Hidden Armory to search out a DDR. Ultimately, the Heavy Storm won't matter too much, because I could pitch it here. But instead, I'm going to pitch a Titanial, because that gets it engrave in case I draw a Miracle Fertilizer or something like that instead. There's arguments that I should keep it in hand. Because if I want to summon it out of Gigaplant, our opponent could DD Crow it, but Gigaplant does not target, so you don't really need to worry about your opponent preemptively, like, DD Crowing the Titanial, because most of the time you're just going to go for the Lone Fire, so. But anyways, here, we're going to go for Supervise on the Gigaplant back, that Lone Fire into Copy Plant. You've seen this all before. We're going to go into the Power Tool Dragon in defense mode because it's the first turn. I actually think this is a bit of a misplay, as you'll see later on in this game, specifically against Lightsworn, but generally you do want this in defense. But it's always good to think through why it's in defense versus why not. And I shouldn't have done that. But I'm going to go for Supervise on the Gigaplant. We're going to bring back that Titanial and just end turn like this. It's not the craziest end board. We could have gone for another, Copy Plant play into Power Tool, into praying that we get the Supervise. But I think this is ultimately the better play because it insulates us against more things. That being said, we also could have gone for Supervise for Nettles into a Stardust Dragon to protect ourselves that way in case they decided things like Lightning Vortex, for instance. But I'm okay with this board overall. I think this is generally fine. It's just maybe the Stardust play would have been a little bit better. But I kind of want to make a wider board with the Gigaplant still up for next turn potentially. Because if they have an Honest, they can run over one of our monsters, and I'd rather still have a pretty good monster left after that. But our opponent's going to go for a charge here, and they're going to mill a Wolf, which is kind of scary. I'm actually going to Crow that Wolf right away. Now, this could be seen as a mistake, and it very well might be a mistake because, there's arguments for saving the Crow for something like a Lila, for instance, or not a Lila, a Lumina, trying to bring back a monster here. But I like Crowing the Wolf because if they summon out Celestia, then I have to use Titanial Tribute the Gigaplant. Gigaplant comes back, of course, but, it's just kind of annoying. So, maybe that's a fine option because it also uses their normal summon. So, maybe this was just a mistake, pure and simple. It probably was. I probably should have not done that. But I think even if they, go Aaron spin back the Power Tool, which they did, which is the error that I mentioned, it should have had Power Tool and attack to play around Aaron. I think we should still be fine here. Our opponent's going to Gold Shark for a JD. They're going to set 1 and mill 3 here, pass back to us. Now, I think I actually do win the game here, which is kind of wild. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. But we do have ways here to deal with what they've got, and we've actually got some pretty cool ways to deal with it. So we're going to think about exactly how to structure this turn, because the fact that they summoned out this Aaron means that they very likely have an Honest here. But we're going to open with this Gigaplant, bring back Copy Plant, and we're going to go for Copy Plant into a Power Tool Dragon. If they have TT here, that's unfortunate. They lose the Aaron, but we do get back that Gigaplant. Of course, they could save the TT for when the Gigaplant comes back, which we lose everything, which would be very rough. We do have a Lightning Prism Mirror, though, to at least mitigate things slightly and hope that we can get into something like a Miracle Fertilizer or something like that to, recover a bit here. But we can also prio the Power Tool once the Gigaplant comes back as well. So we can still get an equip spell here to at least do something. So not the end of the world, but we are going to go for Power Tool here, and we're going to search out Mark the Rose, and Supervise. If we get the Supervise, we can extend our combo. If we get Mark of the Rose, we can take their monster, and that'll be pretty good for us if we do, and we did get it. We're going to go for Heavy Storm, clear out that last back row. We know it's not TT, but it could have been something like, well, it couldn't have been Mirror Force, I guess, but better safe than sorry, I guess. It was a Beckoning Light, though, so not really going to help them here that much. We're going to go for Mark of the Rose, take control of that Aaron, and that will indeed be lethal damage. 1,600 plus 2,400 plus 23 plus 28 is over 8,000. Now, that wasn't the last game we played. We actually played a rematch as well. And I hope that this second match here will show how tricky the deck can be, because I do mess up quite a bit in the second match. And it shows that the deck is not the easiest thing in the world. Despite as, you know, in hindsight, looking over these replays, it might seem like pretty simple lines relatively. The deck can be quite tricky if you don't play it well. But we're going to go for a Hidden Armory to start, searching out a Supervise here. And then we're going to go for Foolish Burial on Dandy, getting those 2 tokens there. And we're going to go for Super Solar Nutrient, going for a Lone Fire Blossom in defense mode. Now we can Lone Fire, and we're going to tribute the Lone Fire itself as opposed to the token. I could have potentially treated the token instead to keep a Lone Fire around and also have, you know, another level to copy off Copy Plant, which might have been better overall. But, you know, I don't think this matters too much. And also, I guess this prevents an Aaron from running it overall. Like, I could have brought the Lone Fire Blossom out and attack instead. But we're going to go into the Copy Plant here. Go for a 7 in the form of Power Tool. Bring back that Gigaplant, Power Tool for Supervise, or Mark of the Rose here. And we're going to add that Supervise to hand. Always lucky. We're going to bring back that Lone Fire Blossom, go into a Titanial here, and then we're just going to pass back to our opponent. And again, I probably should have treated the token instead of the Lone Fire to have that on hand next turn. I can always tribute the Lone Fire for the Titanial instead of the token, but our opponent's going to go for a charge here, and they're going to mill a Plague, which is quite good for them. They can make some stuff happen with that Plague, unfortunately for us. And they are going to activate a Soul Recharge here, pitching a Celestia, drawing 2, milling 2. Milling a second Honest. I'm very glad to see 2 Honest engraved. Makes it less likely we have to worry about that later, because that is one of the scariest things going against Lightsworn in this format, where they have access to so many Honests. It should just be very, very hard to deal with. Our opponent's going to go for a Lumina, pitching a Necro, so we do have to worry about that Necro there. Bring back a Lila, stacking a Plague here. Now they have a couple options. They could potentially go for a Mistworm here, bouncing back Gigaplant, Power Tool, and the Titanial. If that does happen, that's quite awkward for us because we don't actually have, you know, a Gigaplant engraved to bring back off Supervise. And they can just attack over this token to provide us a tribute there. But we do have a Miracle Fertilizer into like, you know, the Lone Fire into a Gigaplant, and then we can, you know, True Nade back the Miracle Fertilizer to, you know, go into another Synchro play. So we'll still be fine here, even if they go Mistworm. Also, I guess Mistworm targets, so we can just tribute for Titanium. So actually, that doesn't even do anything. But the play that they do is much better, in my opinion. They go for a Catastor here, and now Catastor can attack into the Titanium. We don't have a way to stop that. They're going to clear that, attack into a token with the Lila, and then they can go main 2, pop the Supervise, and activate a Gold Shark here, search out a JD, and pass back to us. They're going to mill some. They mill a Wolf, so even better for them. And now we are in a bit of a tricky spot. We do draw into a Mark of the Rose, though, so that is quite nice. We can also activate our Power Tool Dragon again and see what we get. I believe, let's see, we've only got 3 equips left in deck. I believe it's 1 Mark of the Rose, 1 DDR, and 1 Supervise. So depending on what we get off the Power Tool, that could potentially change our play here. So we are going to get that Mark of the Rose to hand here. And that's actually, you know, one of the better options here, honestly. Because we do have some things that we can do with this. So we're going to think about this a little bit here. But ultimately, we are going to decide to use our normal summon on the Gigaplant to get the effect. Bring back the Copy Plant. Mark of the Rose, their Lila. And then Mark of the Rose, their Wolf. Go into a 9 here. For the Mistworm, bounce back the Catastor, and then try and get in for a fair amount of damage. That was the line that I came up with. There was probably a better line that I didn't think of here, especially because I can Miracle Fertilizer, then True Nade, and then Miracle Fertilizer again. So that might have been better than just summoning out the Gigaplant and just getting 1 summon from Grave, as opposed to getting 2 summons from Grave. So, you know, let me know what your thoughts on that are. They've got a Necro engraved, so this wouldn't kill either way. So that was also sort of part of my reasoning was that I'd rather have the Miracle Fertilizer around for next turn if I need it, and have the True Nade around for next turn if I need it as well. But they will banish that Necro there, and we will have to pass back to them. Now, if they go for JD here, that's rough. So that is another argument for going for the Miracle Fertilizer True Nade play, because then I can get them down below 1,000 guaranteed, because they've only got one Necro. So if I had been able to bring back like a Titanial, for instance, then they'd be below the threshold that they actually need to pop the board. So that is an argument for doing Miracle Fertilizer, True Nade Miracle Fertilizer. I probably should have done that. That is my mistake there, because I could have ended up doing the same play with the Mistworm. Yes, I would have, because I just activate the second Miracle Fertilizer the last thing in the turn, so the zones would not get too clogged here. Anyways, we do draw a Dust Shoot here, which would be kind of nice if we make it to the next turn, but it's not going to matter here. We will indeed win here. We want to play around Gores a little bit because they didn't summon out anything, so we're going to bring back the Copy Plant with the Giga Plant, summon out Lone Fire, and go for an Armory Arm here, equipping it to the Power Tool, and that will be exact lethal. So, yeah, that was a pretty good game one. It shows that the deck can, even if it doesn't kill in one turn, it can sort of last a bit to, grind out its opponent over a couple turns if it needs to. But now let's go into game two and see how we do in this game. And this game actually starts out pretty well for us, but as you'll see, I make a crucial mistake that does indeed come back to bite us here. So we're going to go for a Gold Shark here for the Lone Fire there and just pass back, because we don't have anything to do here. Looks like our opponent doesn't really have anything to do as well. So, that's a nice thing for us, at least. But, yeah, we don't really have any good options here. So we go for Lone Fire because that will be a combo starter for us when we get it back in a turn or two. Our opponent's going to go for Recharge Pitching Wolf, always a classic. And they're going to mill a Gold Shark and a DD Crow. So not the best mills from them. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Hidden Armory. So now we actually can make some things happen. So we're going to go for Heavy Storm, stopping a TT. So we're glad to see that gone. We're going to go for Hidden Armory here, milling a Lone Fire, which I'm not too upset by, and searching out a DDR, pitching a Super Solar Nutrient to go into that Lone Fire, because we don't need the Super Solar Nutrient when we've got Lone Fire access right here. We're going to bring that Lone Fire, go into a Giga Plant here, Supervise, bring back a Lone Fire with the Giga Plant, and now we can go into our Copy Plant, and now we're off to the races again. We can go into a 7 here for the Power Tool. Get our search off after the Supervise, bring back Giga Plant. Going for Supervise, and DDR here. We get back the Supervise, so I'm happy about that. We're going to go for Supervise on the Giga Plant, bring back that Copy Plant again. And you know what? Let's just get greedy with it. We're going to go for another Power Tool Dragon. We got this Miracle Fertilizer in hand. So if we whiff off the Power Tool, searching out Supervise here, we can still bring back Lone Fire with the Miracle Fert and then bring out like Titanium. And that will still be lethal. So that's why I'm fine doing this play. It could be a bit greedy, especially if they've got Gores to stop our lethal push here. But, we're always lucky. Supervise here. And now we can go for even further extension with the Lone Fire. Now we don't actually have to do the Miracle Fertilizer here. And we can just go for the Titanium directly. Save the Miracle Fertilizer for later. So we're going to attack in 23, 23, 24. And on the 24, they do drop Gores. So they do have it. But this does drop them down to 1,000. So even if they go for a JD, they can't pop the entire board. So that's quite nice. Now they've got a Light Token and a Gores. I attack in the Light Token because my reasoning here is like, okay, they've not committed anything to the board yet, right? So they might not have many Lightsworn monsters. And if they don't have Lightsworn monsters, what do they likely have? Well, they've got Gores for sure, right? But they might have some Honest that they just haven't really been able to do anything with. They could also not have that, because if you got Honest, it makes sense to just summon an Honest, attack in, bounce it back. But I'm thinking like, okay, I want to make it the least likely that they can actually get over our stuff with an Honest. So I'm attacking the Light Token instead of the Gores. I don't think it will make too much of a difference here. It ends up making a slight difference in the end of the game. But I think it's ultimately fine which one of these I take, because we should be in a pretty good spot here overall. We're going to think about exactly what to do here, because we could extend further with the Miracle Fertilizer this turn, and go into some other synchros, but we'll save that for later, see what happens. Opponent's going to go for a recharge here, pitching a Celestia, drawing 2, milling 2. They're going to go for a charge as well, and they're going to get a Lightsworn search here, searching out a Lila here. Now, here I make a crucial misplay, because I look in their grave, and I see 4 Lightsworn. So I'm like, okay, they got 4 names in grave, so if they got a JD, they can drop the JD anyways. Not realizing that 2 of the Lightsworns have the same name. So that's kind of rough. I should have paid more attention. In my defense, it was a bit late at night for me. But I should still be trying to do the best that I can, in any game that, I'm playing, no matter what time it is. But because I think there are 4 names in grave, I'm like, okay, they got 4 names in grave anyways. So if they get JD, negating this Lila won't make a difference. So I can use Titanial Tribute the Gigaplant to stop this, to then bring back that Gigaplant, and at least get a Lightsworn off the field. So it's one less thing I have to attack into next turn. However, if I'd realized that they only had 3 names in grave, like, obviously, this is not the right thing to do, because they can just go into a JD here, and that will be quite annoying for us. Unfortunately, again, did not realize that. And so now we're in a pretty tough spot because they do indeed have the JD. That is their 4th name in grave. And now things get a bit tough for us. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't the end of the game for us. Again, they can't pop the entire board, but they can attack over our Titanial and over our Gigaplant. So that makes things a little bit awkward for us here. If we look at the grave, we still do have a fair amount of quips left in deck. So that can help us play through this a little bit. Our opponent's going to set 3 back row, though, and that's going to be quite awkward for us. They also mill into a wolf to get that in defense, so, again, a little bit awkward for us here. But we can go into a power tool here and search out Mark of the Rose, and DDR, which are our last, set of equip spells in the deck there. So we get back a DDR, so we unfortunately whiff on that. Which is rough. We kind of wanted a Mark of the Rose to get searched here because, if they've got something like MST or Twister, which we have seen from them in the past, we want to bait that out and also bait out, like, they might have 2. So either way, it might be kind of the end of the game. Like, because we want 1 to be used on Miracle Fertilizer, 1 to be used on, like, Mark of the Rose. But if they only have 1, then having the Mark of the Rose here would actually potentially put them into a checkmate position. So, unfortunately, we do whiff on that. So that is kind of rough. We just kind of have to go for Miracle Fertilizer here, hoping that they don't have like an MST or something, or hoping that, they think we got Mark of the Roses follow-up. And so, they may not use the MST here. Unfortunately, they are indeed going to go for the MST on the Miracle Fert, which is rough for us. And then we're going to switch that Power Tool to defense, attack over the Wolf, and then just set a DDR and a Lightning Prism Mirror and pass back to our opponent, because we don't really have much else to do here. Now, this is the moment where, things could potentially make a difference. We attacked over the Gores instead of the token, because instead of attacking into the Wolf, we could have switched both Power Tools to defense, and then they could only get over one of them with a JD, which would have bought us a little bit more time. But realistically, it doesn't matter like too much. So yeah, it's just, we're kind of in an awkward spot either way here. They mill 4 more off the JD. I let the mills go through because I'm thinking, well, okay, if I can stall long enough, then maybe they mill themselves out. That's another potential option. If I don't get into a way to just win the game outright, maybe I can stall them long enough to do that. And so I do just let it go through. I don't think the Wolf itself will make too much more of a difference. Either I draw away to stop what they're doing this turn, or I don't. Basically either win or I lose. Unfortunately, we draw into a Super Solar Nutrient, and that will not be enough. So we're going to go on into the game 3. So again, if I'd been paying attention more to their graveyard, I think things could have turned out a little bit more differently. But also our opponent could have potentially, done Lila just attack into Power Tool. They would have gone down a lot more in life, but they would have been able to bring out the JD that way. So I think, like, either way, if they wanted to get the Judgment Dragon online, they could have. It's just kind of unfortunate that it worked out that way. And also, if they'd done it that way, then they wouldn't have been able to go to the battle phase and attack over our stuff with the JD. So we would have probably been in a good enough spot to actually win the game from that position anyways. So, yeah, so that I lost that one just because of my miscounting. So I apologize for that. But it does get us into a game 3 here, so we can see a bit more about what this deck can do. I think this deck is actually very, very good against Lightsworn. Just over the course of these games, it might just be luck on my part because I have been drawing very, very lucky hands. I did some test hands before actually playing these games just to try and, train myself on the combos as much as I could, because again, combos can be quite difficult here in this deck. And a lot of my test hands weren't nearly as good. So this could just be an instance of me getting like very lucky over the course of these games. But, I think that also can happen, right? So it is something that this deck can do. If it gets lucky, then it can pop off like none other. I go for the Power Tool. Unfortunately, I whiff on the search, so I search out Mark the Rose instead of a Supervise, which is kind of rough. I'm going to go for Upstart here, try and draw into something that can send the combo further, but unfortunately, we don't get it. So we're just going to have to leave things at this and just pass back to our opponent. They're going to go for a charge here, milling 3, milling 2 names. So that's a bit scary there. But they're going to search out a Lumina here to potentially get some combos going. They're going to pitch a BrainCon to bring back Lila. Very happy to see BrainCon gone. That card is scary. But it also means that the rest of their hand might be a little bit scary as well. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a bit worrying to see there. But they're going to run over our Gigaplant with an Honest, set 1, pass back to us. And they're going to mill a bunch in end phase here. So they do mill a Plague, which will give them some more options next turn as well. We draw into a Solemn Judgment here. We got to think about exactly what to do. I really like the play of just going for Mark on the Lila here, banishing the Gigaplant, and then popping their back row. And we do indeed do that, and we get rid of a Royal Oppression. So very happy that we did that. And now, the clear play here, we can DDR, bring back Gigaplant, go for things like that. However, here is also where I make my crucial misplay. I think we can actually win this turn through pretty much whatever else they might have. Which may sound crazy, just like looking at what we've got, but we know Gorz is gone. They've got no Necros in grave. So the only hand trap that we need to worry about is Honest. And I think we actually do have some ways to deal with that. So, firstly, what I do here is I go for a DDR. I think a bit here. I go for DDR, pitching Nettles, and I bring back Gigaplant. And now, I've just got in my mind, because I've done the combo so much, I've got in my mind, okay, I can go Gigaplant, normal summon Gigaplant, bring back a copy plant, go into a power tool, search out Supervise, and then just continue my combo that way. However, Gigaplant will not come back once it's used up in the Synchro Summon here, because DDR does not bring it back. Supervise is what would bring it back. So this is actually a major misplay on my part. What I should do instead of going for Gigavise or Gigaplant for copy plant is I should Gigaplant for a Lone Fire, or I could do Gigaplant for Nettles into Bryonac, and Bryo bounce the Lumina and then go that way. That wouldn't quite be lethal though. So what I think I should do instead is Gigaplant for Lone Fire into Titanial, and also I should make it known. Also, I should have bounced back the Trunade, or I should have Trunated back my Mark of the Rose to send back the Lila, so then I could use the Mark of the Rose again to take the Lumina to run over the Lila. And then I'd have 23 plus 24 plus 28. So I guess that's not quite lethal. So I guess that's not lethal this turn. So if it's not lethal this turn, then what I should have done was after going for Lone Fire into Titanial, I should still bounce back the Mark of the Rose. Probably attack the Power Tool into the Lumina if they got Honest. They got Honest. It's kind of rough for me. But I do still have the Mark of the Rose in hand, at least for later. Or I could have just done the Bryonac play. The Bryonac play probably would have been the best play here. I lose the Mark of the Rose, but I bounce back the Lumina. They can always go for a Catastrophe play, though, but we've got Solemn Judgment to stop that. So the Solemn in hand insulates things a bit, so I probably should have gone Nettles into a 6 for that Bryo play, and then set Solemn Judgment as backup. Yeah, that's probably what I should have done. I'd also have Trunade's backup if they had back row instead. So, but I don't do that, and that is going to be very costly for me here. So I bring out another power tool, search out Supervise, and Bark of the Rose, because again, I'm not thinking through this combo. But those are the only 3 equips left in deck anyways. So, but yeah, now I don't bring back the Gigaplant because I can't. So it just remains in grave, and we're in a much, much worse spot now. So I attack into the Lumina, and then I attack directly with that power tool, dropping them down quite a bit. And then main phase 2, I think I should just go Trunade here now that I'm in this bad spot, because then I at least have Mark the Rose to take something like a Judgment Dragon and potentially get a lot of damage in there on the following turn. So yeah, but as is, I just set the Judgment pass because I'm thinking like, okay, well, I want Trunade to bounce back what they've got when I go for later turn stuff, right? But our opponent's going to go for Plague here, bring back that Plague, banish Plague, go into a Goyo there. I do want to Solemn that. I could also not Solemn this, but I think it makes sense to Solemn here because it just deprives them of what they've got. If they got JD, then things are going to be bad for me either way here. because I don't have anything to search out off Power Tool because I've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equip spells in my deck, so I don't have 3 left to search. The Power Tool is useless. So yeah, I don't really have a good way to deal with it either way. So I kind of just saw him the Goyo. Probably shouldn't have, but yeah, they're gonna go for JD, pop the board, and get in for 3,000. So I'm down to 150 now, which is quite scary. They mill 4 into a Wolf, which is going to be kind of tough. And we draw into T-Roar. So unfortunately, we can't really do much here. And again, I think if I had gone into the Bryo play, I guess they still would have been able to, well, they wouldn't have the Luminon field, so they wouldn't be able to do really a synchro play here unless they had another one in hand, but they didn't have another monster in hand. So they wouldn't have been able to do a synchro play with the Plague. So I would have just been able to solve the Judgment. And yeah, and then we would have been in a fine spot to just win the game from that position. So, yeah, I think I think we misplayed this one quite a bit. And, hindsight's 20/20, of course. But this was such a, blatant misplay on my part that I should have realized, that I didn't. So that is completely on me. We go for Threatening Roar, chaining to the JD. Survive another turn at least. They go for Gold Sark on Honest. It's not going to last 2 more turns, though, no matter what happens. Either we find a way to somehow miraculously win here, which I don't think is likely, or we just don't and we lose. We draw into a Crow, so that will be the end of the game there. So, again, we messed up earlier in this game. I think we actually could have won this Game 3 as well as Game 2. As I mentioned, Game 2, we just don't negate the Lila, don't put that 4th name engrave, and we're fine. But, that happens. This deck is quite tricky to play optimally. And, I'm victim to that here. I was not able to play it as optimally as I prefer. And unfortunately, we lost the second match. But I think the second match definitely was winnable from us. Even if we had still negated the, Lila in Game 2 and they'd been able to win that way. Game 3, I think we definitely would have won if, we'd realized that the Giga Plant would not have come back off the, Synchro Summon there. But, let me know what you think about this deck down in the comments below. Do you like this deck being around in this format? Do you have other lines that I could have done that would have been better in this situation? Let me know down in the comments below, as always. And also, if you liked what you saw here, like, comment, subscribe. And also head on over to the channels that I put in the description and like, comment, subscribe over there as well. If you want to play games in Lightsworn format or any other format that I feature on the channel, head over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. And if you want to support me directly, I also have Patreon linked in the description down below. And if you join the Patreon, you'll be able to get shout out in these videos. So big shout outs to Rinswin, Park Tripkin, Bren Donker, Tyler Compton, GMYFS, Dump Truck, Scout Zero, and Damon Has. It means a lot that you all support me this way and encourage me to make more videos like this one in the future. I hope that you all enjoyed, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off. Peace.